in my circle? Who the one who be the snakes? Who gon' fold up under pressure? Who gon' understand the stakes? Who gon' wait to get their food to try to take from off my plate? Who the love? Who gon' understand I'm hurt? Who gon' love me unconditionally and try to make it work? Who gon' party once I'm gone and shed a tear once I'm in dirt? I ain't asking for too much, I'm trying to understand my worth.
Welcome to the next episode of Give Me My Crown podcast.
Give Me My Crown podcast.
And we back at y'all with another episode of the Give Me My Crown podcast. And this episode is going to be, not going to be too long of an episode, but it's going to be more into how because we always talk about real estate. We're always talking about buying a house, selling houses. We always talk about the market, things like that. So this is kind of the same avenue, but we're going to talk more about how real estate can benefit you when it comes to investing and making money directly off of real estate.
Yeah. So, Antonio, we kind of want you to dive in this one because I know anybody who's been watching this know he get passionate about real estate. You know, he's a real estate agent, and as somebody who's used them before, he's very in tune with the market. So give the people a couple of ways that you can take real estate, whether it's your personal real estate or it's just investing in real estate, to really change their financial status.
All right, so first, let's go into it. So when you're strictly buying to invest, it's different than buying to live in because you obviously have different there's different types of loans you can use. There's different types of and when you use different loans, you're looking at different interest rates. You're looking at whether you're doing a business loan or whether you're doing an actual real estate loan. So that kind of depends on what you're doing because you have most of the time when you're looking to invest, you have conventional loans, you have cash, you have DCSR, DSCR, different types of loans like that. Sometimes you can use VA and FHA depending on the situation, but you can't use it to strictly invest. You still have to say it's like a quadplex. You still have to live in one of those units with certain types of those loans. So when it comes to real estate investing, a lot of times people will buy a property and rent it out. So by doing that, obviously you want to make sure you're buying a property that is going to make you money. When I say that, you don't want to buy a property in when you're looking at investing, it's different than looking at It's different than looking at where you're going to live at, because a lot of times you don't buy an investment property where you want to live at. And the reason I say that, because if you take for instance gentrification. If you buy in an area that's going through gentrification, that's going to make you money in the long run. You may say, I wouldn't live here. And correct, you may not live there. But if it's in a prospering area, then you can rent that house out now, make a little bit of money. In a year or two, you may be in excess of $500-$600 a month, if not more. Or if it's a place like, say for instance, say you look at the Charlotte market. When you look at the outskirts of Charlotte, not the outskirts of Uptown. So you have the center of Uptown, then you have all the little sections around Uptown. All those areas right now are going through gentrification. Okay. So when you look at those areas, a lot of them are hot spots for Airbnbs. And the reason why is because whenever you got basketball games in Charlotte, football games in Charlotte, you got a lot of concerts, you got a lot of other events in Charlotte. So when those events come to Charlotte, people want to stay near Uptown because most of those events happen uptown. So by having an Airbnb in some of those areas, even though it's not the best area right now, people will rent those areas because of the convenience it is to Uptown. And then you can turn around in a couple of years. So say you might rent it out right now for $100 a night, whatever. And then, but in a couple of years, when that area is top tier, that $100 a night may go to $130, $150, $170 a night. So that is how it helps. And you also want to make sure, if you're doing just a regular area, you want to make sure that whatever you can charge in rent or Airbnb, whatever you're doing, you want to make sure, obviously, that it exceeds your mortgage. And you want to also account for incidentals, because if your mortgage is $3,000 a month, but your rent equals $3,000 a month. It doesn't make too much sense to buy that unless you're just trying to build your portfolio, but you're not leaving any room for incidentals. You always want to leave room for, okay, if something happens to this house, I can come back and I can afford to fix it. I can afford to make repairs to this. Now, on the flip side of that, real estate for the most part always increases. So if your mortgage is $3,000 and your rent is $3,000, in a couple years, that mortgage or that house will be worth more than what you paid for. But with that said, you want to make sure you're getting in an area that's going to increase when you're looking at real estate for strictly investing purposes.
So I got a question. I know you deal with like general contractors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When you're looking at like, first let me say this. This man can do some immaculate work of his own. Him and his wife get down to like, putting up walls, turning an area that ain't nothing into a gym. So like, but people that's not like you, somebody like me, right? I ain't trying to do no hard work. What's the general rule? Do you have general rules when it comes to getting a contract to do some work for you, or
so
obviously,
like so when it comes to a general contractor, you have everything, because a lot of people will get scammed by general contractors. So
okay.
my general rule of thumb is when I'm looking for a general contractor, I'm looking for somebody who has who. For one, I want to see pictures of their work. For two, I want to see reviews of their work, and I want to see, I want to talk to other people, or at least read reviews of other people who has had work done by them. Now, a red flag for me with anything is if I look at their reviews and their reviews are, say they got 5 stars out of 50 reviews, but when I look at the reviews, they look like something Chat GPT typed in. That's a red flag for me, because it almost seems like curated or bought reviews. So I want to see like genuine reviews. So I'm always looking for that. And the cheapest person is not always the best person. So because obviously you got different specialties. You got concrete, you got people who do general contract, you got people who do woodwork, you got all these different specialties. So you want to find somebody who, like I say, not necessarily the cheapest, but you want to find a balance, somebody who has good work, but they're also a good price, because you also don't want to go for the highest price person when you can find somebody who can do it just as good for $2,000 less. So that's my general rule of thumb. Just like I said, read reviews, make sure you do your research on the company, make sure they are a real company. Make sure you're not getting scammed, because there's a lot of general contractors out here that will scam people, or they'll make you pay up front, or make you pay a certain percentage up front, which in itself is not necessarily a red flag, because you got to pay. They got to buy the materials. So a lot of times they want you to pay up front for the materials. So just you can always ask for an itemized list. Like, hey, I know what we're getting done. I understand you want half the money up front. I'm cool with that, but can you send me an itemized list of what we're buying? Because once we had some work done and we talked to the guy, he wanted, I want to say in total, he wanted like $4,000. So we was like, all right, cool. I'm not sure exactly what this is supposed to charge, but I understand you want $4,000. All right. So how much of this is for materials? Oh, $2,000 is for materials. So at the time, my wife was working at Lowe's. So I'm like, hold on. I said $2,000 for materials. I said, we can get these materials at a fraction of this price.
Yeah.
So we ended up going to Lowe's. She ended up using her discount. And we ended up getting the materials for, I think, $600 or $700. So we saved just $1,300 on the front end, where because he never sent us a list. He just said, well, I think this is about the stuff you're gonna need. So we go to the store with him. He starts just picking up stuff that we're gonna need. But in the car, adds up to, like I said, about $600-700. So I think asking for an itemized list up front definitely helps, because if you can get the materials cheaper, or say, because contractors obviously sometimes get a contractor's discount. But if you're military and you can get a military discount from some of these places, like you can save a lot of money off materials on the front end. So
Okay.
I definitely think that's important to do, and know the people you're working with. You got to stay on top of contractors. Yes, that is their specialty, but hey, why is it taking you so long to do this? And sometimes they may have a valid reason, like, okay, I'm cool with that, but don't just keep blowing me off like, oh, this came up or that came up, or we're doing this, we're doing that, and don't let them cut corners. So you want to make sure if it's something that need to be permitted in your house, you want to make sure they're pulling permits for that stuff, because that will come back to bite you in the end. If say you go to sell, say you get some work done to your house and it was supposed to be permitted, or for instance, say you had an unfinished room in your house or unfinished basement, whatever, and it was not permitted. When you go to sell that house, you can't sell that house with that extra bedroom or a finished basement if it was not permitted.
Okay. That's good knowledge right there, man. Because I know a lot of people who get stuff done, and they like it might be by their cousin or their uncle or somebody.
Yeah.
So that's
And
good information. Yeah.
sometimes you can get that stuff permitted on the back end, but it could be harder because if they end up having to cut walls and things like that, then it's forcing you to have to do more work. So if you get the permits on the front end, it makes it a lot easier and it's a lot less hassle, because say you're selling a house, say you got a room that adds 500 square feet to the house or 300 square feet to the house. That's a huge difference in selling that as a finished room than selling that as an unfinished room, because if it's finished and it's permitted, you can add that square footage in. Without that square footage, you're losing or without that permit, you're losing square footage and you're losing the bedroom, which could drop the price drastically.
Okay. I like the information, man. That's good information.
So next, let's go. Go ahead. I see you.
No, go ahead, man. You're on the road. Go ahead.
I was gonna say next, let's go into kind of how your own property can help you. So when you're buying a property for yourself to live in, not necessarily investing.
Question. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you going into how you snowball the?
Yes.
Okay. This is the one people I think is the most intriguing to me. He broke this down in the previous podcast, but he didn't dive into it. So I really wanted him to dive into this one, because this is the one to me I think people don't really think about. And can you go into like the same numbers? Because how you snowball up like to like $1 million home. So go ahead.
Yeah. So obviously when you're buying a house, you want to find a house that obviously you like. So this one, you're going to buy a house in a neighborhood that you want to live in an area you want to live in, because you're not looking at it strictly for investment purpose. You're actually living in this house. So for the most part, mine is maybe 6 or 7 years, I think. Over the past 50 years, real estate generally goes up. You've had those down years, the recession, you had 2008, years like that, a couple years after 2008 where it's going on a decline. But for the most part, real estate increases year by year by year. So when you're buying a house, you want to buy a house in an area. When you buy a house, you want to look. Most of the time, you're looking in an area that's going to increase. The house is going to increase in value, because if you're looking into newer neighborhoods, the earlier you get into a newer neighborhood, by the time that last house is finished building, they may build the exact same house that they built for you, but that house might then be starting at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 more than what you paid for your house. So even if you've only lived there, because some of these, I've seen some of them, they're going up by $10,000 a month, and that's not the norm. But I have seen that, especially during times where it is a seller's market.
Yeah.
Where you're seeing these huge jumps either every month or every other month, whatever. So you're seeing these huge jumps like that. So when you look at certain things like that, you want to make sure, like I said, you're buying at a good price. First of all, you don't want to overpay for a house. During COVID, when it was a seller's market, you had a lot of people severely overpaying for a house, and that's where real estate where I say the numbers go up year after year. when you're overpaying for a house on the front end, or you don't have a good real estate agent that's going to tell you, hey, you're overpaying for this house severely. That's where you can kind of that's where it kind of gets where the waters kind of get muddy, because you're overpaying for a house in the front end, so you're not seeing those advantages. And then you also have to live in the house for a certain amount of time. You don't have to, but you want to live in the house for a certain amount of time, because if you live there, a lot of times, generally, if you live there under a year, people know that there's some kind of circumstances or some kind of extenuating circumstances that's forcing you to sell. A lot of times they're thinking, hey, is something wrong with this house? Is something wrong with this area? Or they're coming back saying, okay, they live there this long, they must have to move across country or to another area for a job. Hey, we're going to lowball them on their offer, because they almost have to accept it because they need to sell this house right now. So that's kind of things you want to keep in mind. So when you're looking at real estate, a lot of people, when they buy houses, you can, in a couple of years, say generally people stay in houses 5 years, especially when it's like their first or second house. When it's your forever home, obviously that's one you're going to stay, you see long term. But generally speaking, let's say 5 years. So if you buy a house, say if you bought a house in 21. I know certain people who bought a house in 21 during COVID. They bought in a new community early for $400,000. Today, that house is worth $800,000. So the value of that house has doubled in a matter of 4 years. By that happening, they can now turn around, sell that house for $800,000. Take that, obviously you're not getting the whole 800. You're taking that 400 paying off, or you're taking 400 that paying off the mortgage. So now you have $400,000 left to play with. So now say you take that 400,000, roll it into another house. So say take that 400,000, roll it into let's say $1 million house. So now you're buying $1 million house, but if you put that 400 down, you're only financing 600,000. And then say you live in that house for another 5 years, and you say, okay, I want to sell. So now that house may be worth $1.3 million. So out of that $1.3 million, you only had 600,000. You only financed 600,000. So now you got 700,000 to play with. So now you take that 700,000, you can roll it into another house. Say now you're looking at a $1.5 million house, but you got 700,000 to put down. You can never afford. You say you can't afford a $1.5 million house, but you can afford a $700,000 house or $800,000 house. So you take that 700 that you made from that last house, put it down. Now you're only financing 800,000. Because if you look at a lot of these large houses, a lot of people are living in houses where they cannot afford the mortgage on the price of that house. But the reason they're able to afford it is because they're taking equity from a previous house and rolling it into that new house. So now their mortgage is a fraction of what it would be if they finance the entire thing.
And I really wanted you to break that down to people, because sometimes you ride past and they and be like, hold up, man. These people don't look like they can afford this house.
Yep.
Which they probably can. But like you said, if you're using this method, you can afford the house, even though you can't really afford the house.
Yeah, because there's certain areas in Charlotte, I can go buy some land right now for $100,000, put a house on that land for $500,000. So I'm all in $600,000, $650 maybe. At the end of the day I close on that house, I could then list that house for over $1 million. And it may take some time to sell. It may not sell in a day or two, but I can then sell that house for $1 million. So you're almost, if you look at just equity, you're a millionaire because of the equity in your house. Now, if you did that and sold that house, and say the house took 6 months to sell, in 6 months, say you listed that house for 1.2, but you're all in 600,000. In 6 months, you've made $600,000. Now, that's not and don't get me wrong, that is not every neighborhood, not every community. You have to look in a lot of that happens in these communities where you already have established $1 million homes, and you're putting a house there that can essentially compare to these houses when you talk about size, things like that. Because when you look at where it starts to get fuzzy is when you start doing these custom homes, because custom homes are generally harder to sell because they're customized to the person who built it. So it's gonna take a certain buyer to come in and want the exact same things. So I think that's where we kind of got to watch out where what you're building. But if you build, just a general house, because there's plenty of builders that will. Because if you look at certain builders like True Homes is a builder that I love because they're semi-custom, but they also will build a house for you. So if you just go find a piece of land, they will come in and build their house on your land. But when I say semi-custom, the reason I say semi-custom is because their stuff, they have the general layout of the house, but you can take their house and flip it. You can say, hey, I want to add a wall here. I want to add doors here. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to bump this out a little bit. And 9 times out of 10, if structurally they can do it, they will do it. And there's a few other companies that will do that also, but True Homes is the one I've had experience with, and the one I know that they are one of they're one that you can do that type of stuff too, and it really helps because, like I said, you're putting they're when they build their houses, they're on the, I'm not gonna say cheap, but they're on the cheaper side than going to find a custom builder, and they can build the house kind of essentially how you like it. Like I said,
go ahead.
I would say, as long as you're getting in the right neighborhood, you're creating instant equity.
Yeah, I shook my head, people, about True Homes because a funny story that we'll talk about later. True Homes, when we're looking for a home, was the home that we like the best. And the world is I'll say karma is very crazy because now somebody that I now know who he knew went in and signed a contract right before we showed up. So, yeah, that's just a funny story. I love True Homes home. So, yeah.
But like I said, True Homes is one of the very few custom home or semi-custom home builders out there because, like I said, even if you're building in one of their communities that are already established and you're just going in and buying a house, sometimes if they're not completely finished building that house, you can say, hey, could y'all put a door right here, put a wall right here, wall this off? And a lot of times they'll say, yeah. So that's why I do like them as a home builder. They're one of my favorite home builders because of that. But there's other home builders that are great also, because if you're looking at like, you got Eastwood Homes, you got Pote, you got DR Horton, you got Adams Homes, you got all these different builders, and they all have their different specialties, but not all of them are custom, not all of them are semi-custom. So each of them have their own different specialties.
Okay, when you talk, like, I know you said semi-custom, right? And you said custom homes are hard to sell. Are semi-custom homes hard to sell too, or?
No, not as much, because a lot of times with semi-custom homes, you're not necessarily changing the full, or you're not changing the full layout. You're changing, like, say for instance, there's like an open dining room. Say for instance, you might wall that off.
Okay.
So you wall that off and put a door that can still be used as a dining room, or you can easily take the doors off. You can make small modifications. But when I say custom, I saw a custom home where house was beautiful. It was a single level house, and it was almost like a square. It was a square shaped house, and in the middle of that was a courtyard. In the middle of that courtyard was a pool, which was, it was pretty dope. It was nice.
Yeah.
But if you have little kids, you might not want that because you got a pool in the center of a courtyard where you can access it from every single room in the house. So if you have little kids, that poses a safety hazard. So if they go to sell their home, they probably just lost a ton of buyers. Anybody who has kids that are, say, under 10 years old.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's why I say custom is harder custom homes are fully custom homes are harder to sell simply because of that reason. Because when they built a lot of times when you look at custom homes, a lot of people build these houses with no intention on moving. But whenever a rule of thumb for me and my wife, whenever we buy a house, even if we say, hey, this is going to be our forever home, we're always looking at resale value.
Yeah.
Because you never know what could happen. You never know what happens in life. You may need to go bigger. You may need to go smaller,
Yeah.
but you always got to keep in mind resale value because like I said, life always throws curveballs. Because house we're in now, we bought this house, and now we're like, hey, we might need more room. So we weren't looking at resale value on the front end because when we first bought this house, we're like, okay, yeah, this is gonna be our forever home. We love this house. And as our girls get older, we're like, yo, it's getting a little tight in here. So now we have to on the back end, like, yo, a good thing we looked at resale value on the front end because now this house is worth a lot more than what we paid for it.
Somebody told you was gonna buy another home. No, this is forever. This forever right here. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a rule of thumb we have is always look at resale value. So even when we're buying a home, because we've looked at plenty of houses that we like now, and we love the house, but when you look at certain aspects, whether it's going into the community, whether it's things around, like, yes, we love this house, but if we have a problem with this over here or this over here, somebody else is thinking the exact same thing we are.
And I remember even when we were looking for a home, you were doing the same thing with me. You were like, I love this house. He's like, look at the backyard. He was like, it slopes down. Like, you don't want that. That's going to be, people don't think about that when you try to resell this. Like things like little small things like that, you looked at because it was always like, how's it going to be 10 years now if you want to resell this house? Think about stuff like that. So, yeah, you always kept that at the forefront.
Because as a real estate agent, that's what I always look at and what I always inform my client. Because obviously, I'm going to get the client what they want. If they absolutely want a house, I'm going to help them get that house. But I'm also going to throw in my 2 cents, like, hey, you also want to look at this. If they like you said, if it has a backyard that slopes down, hey, you got little kids, but you only got 10 feet of yard. Are you sure this is something that you can live with? Yeah. And if you go to sell the house, just think about if somebody has little kids, this may not be something they want. So I'm going to always sell you the house you want to buy, but I'm also going to tell you the benefits, the pros and cons of buying that house or what could be harmful for resale value in the future.
Because I remember one house we liked, and you were like, nah, when you first come into the neighborhood, that first house got like a bunch of junk.
Yeah, it was a junkyard essentially in the front
junkyard essentially. And you was like, that's not going to be great. He's like, that's an eyesore. Like, you got to think resale value. And he was like, even though house nice price, it's been fully renovated, that right there is going to kill you.
Yeah, because like I said, if you see it, somebody else is thinking the exact same thing. Yeah. So you want to. So when you're going to sell your house, you want to be open to as many buyers as possible, and that's not always going to be feasible. But you at least want to have that in mind when buying a house, especially like I said, if you're looking at it for long-term investing purposes, because it's not many investments that you're going to make where you're going to make the amount of money that you can make from selling a house that just off of because your investment is so little also. So because if you're looking at things like stock market, things like that, you're investing a lot on the front end, and you may make a lot of money, but you're investing a lot of money. If you look at, for instance, a house, you may be say you bought a house for $400,000, but then you can sell it for $800,000 in 4 years. If say your payments are $2,000 a month, that's $24,000 a year. In 4 years, that's what, a little under $100,000.
Yep.
That you've invested, but then you made $400 on the back end. So that's kind of how I look at things when it comes to real estate investing, and when I'm buying real estate for myself, or when I'm helping somebody buy real estate. Those are things I like to teach up front, because I don't like to, like, I'm not selling you a house just to get a commission check. I'm selling you it's a lifestyle essentially. I'm trying to help you on the front end, but also, I mean, yes, I do get paid from it because there is a lot of work that goes into it, but I'm trying to help you also and help you make money on the back end and not be upside down if you do ever decide to sell that house.
Yeah, but like I said, man, like I always say, as far as real estate agents, like the amount of time you take, like, it's crazy. Like, you treat people like family for real. So I will say, as somebody who's done it, and I am family, but the amount of time he takes, like, I don't know how many houses you show. It might have been like 20, 30. Like, you were like, Yeah, I can tell by your face you don't like this. I can tell by your face now, but I'm gonna say no to this one because of this. Like you were thorough, and then even as far as like looking at you do contracts, like no matter what we doing, you take care of the people, your clients. We were in Nashville. Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep my phone on me just in case a client calls. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You always take care of your people. But like I said, we had almost a 30-minute mark, and you gave people a lot of information. I know you can keep talking, man. I know how passionate you are about real estate, but we might have to do a part 2 episode of this. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm down with it. Definitely down with a part 2. Maybe next time we also could get a lender, maybe a lender on here, tell you from the lending side, because it is different from the lending side is a whole different aspect.
Yeah.
Because that goes into how much you're paying and the interest rate, what kind of loan you want to get, what kind of loan you need to get, what kind of loan you can afford, where certain loans you can only live in certain places for this loan. Not every neighborhood qualifies for certain loans. So there's different stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, think we did give a lot of information. Like I said, we'll come back, do a part 2. And as we say before we get off every podcast, this is more than a podcast. We handing out crowns.
Hand them out.
Who the lover, who the hate? Who the realest in my circle? Who the one who be the snakes? Who gon' fold up under pressure? Who gon' understand the stakes? Who gon' wait to get they food to try to take from off my plate? Who the love? Who gon' understand I'm hurt?